But now there's not more than one member of Congress. After they saw some Republicans losing in Republican areas, now they're coming and they're talking to me, quietly begging and pleading. How about endorsing me? I said, well, what do you want me to do? You know, make the argument. Of course, I know exactly what they're talking about. And one person came the other day and said, well, I need your endorsement. I said, why is that? They said, well, I'm going to have an opponent, and it's a Ron Paul. It's a Ron Paul supporter. I said, well, how can I go against one of my supporters? I said, you ought to be really happy that I haven't endorsed him. But the congressperson said, well, the problem in my district is they're not real happy with our candidate. And I need to get a little bit away from our candidate and the president. But that's what they've been running on. So they want to use us now and say, well, if you support us, then we're, you know, not part of the establishment. But they're in a bit of difficulty because they don't want to change their ways, but they want the benefits of what we're talking about. Right. And one individual came and asked about how I might teach them how to raise money on the internet. Would you have a seminar to teach them how to raise money on the internet? I said, well, it doesn't work quite that way. And, it was during a vote, and the vote was up there. It was 434 to 1. I didn't want to be impolite, but what I was thinking was, why don't you change the way you vote? Maybe that would help you.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably the greatest lesson that I learned this year has been how freedom really brings us together. And I always knew that to be the case, but I've seen it more than ever before. The people who come together in the campaign and in the rallies and the people who support our cause are so diverse. And it's a natural thing. We should expect that because freedom means that we're turning your life back to you, that we're not going to tell you what you can smoke and drink and read and do. It's up to you on what you want to do.
That's right.
That when it comes to reading of literature and how we practice our religious beliefs, which to me are pretty important. Intellectual curiosity as well as dealing with our own soul, and we want to deal with that ourselves. But all of a sudden, decades ago, probably 40, 50 years ago, we said, yes, but we're not smart enough. We can deal with our intellect, we can deal with our soul, but we're not smart enough to deal with our own body, so we have to have the government tell us everything that we're allowed to do, what we can eat and drink and smoke and all this. And of course they said, yeah, but they're protecting us against the bad stuff. Yeah, but guess what? They use that same power to protect us against the good stuff too. And they come in and start regulating food and nutrition and vitamins and telling us what we can do with alternative care. So that is why the principle of liberty is so important. And that is also the reason that people will come together to use their freedoms in different ways. But there's also the issue of money. If you have a right to your life, which I strongly believe we have a natural right to our life because that is God-given to us and it belongs to us, we ought to be able to use our lives as we see fit and take our own risk. At the same time, the follow-up is that you have the right to keep the fruits of your labor. They belong to you, they don't belong to the state. That's why the principle of the income tax is so bad. It's based on the principle that the government owns everything and they permit us to keep a certain percentage under certain conditions. So they own our lives through the income tax system.
That's right.
And yet the same principle applies to economics. Yes, if you want to take your money and blow it, and make bad investments and make mistakes, that's what you have a right to do in a free society. But you have no right to go to your neighbor through the armed might of government and saying, look, I made a bad mistake and I want my neighbor to take care of me, and if he doesn't take care of me, I'm going to send him to jail because he wouldn't pay his taxes. That's the part we have to do.
That's right.
an economic and a social issue having to do with how you spend your money. If you spend your money, you might like to play cards. I don't play cards because I can't play cards, and I don't like gambling, and it's not good, and I don't want to deal with a lot of that. But some people like to do it, and they enjoy it, and they can handle it. So you could argue the case where they have a right, it's their money, they can spend it the way they want. The other argument is it's up to them on their social behavior. You know, if they want to gamble, that's up to them to do it. But this is the reason I've taken the very strong position on internet gambling. I don't like gambling, but I'll tell you one thing I do like, is I like the internet, and I like you to make your choices on how you're going to spend your money, but I don't want the government taxing or regulating the internet in any way whatsoever. The one thing that's happened probably maybe 100 years ago, we took freedom and divided it up into pieces. The founders did not do this. They only talked about liberty and freedom, and it was economic and social liberty, and they were one and the same. But just think of what's happened over these last many decades, has been that some people are better at defending economic liberty, but they're the ones who challenge you at your social liberties. Somebody else will defend your social liberties, and they think you have no right for your economic liberty. Liberty is a whole. It's one unit. It deals with the right to your life, and you can put it back together. Woo! The other charge that gets thrown at us so often is, you people sound like you want to go back to the Dark Ages of going back, you know, to the Constitution. Don't you know the Constitution has to be a flexible document and all that stuff?
No.
I tell you what, freedom is a new idea. Tyranny is the old idea. That's where they want to take us. On a daily basis, we have more tyrannical approach to all our problems than ever before. It has become a disaster ever since 9/11 because they've scared us to death. In the Depression, they scared us to death economically and introduced all these welfare government programs. And now with the 9/11, it's not like World War I and World War II. We had an enemy. They encroached on civil liberties, but generally they backed off. You know, they didn't keep the Japanese in prison camps forever. They backed off a little bit. Never back to normal, but they backed off. In this case, conditions are much worse because the war is to go on forever. Because the enemy is unidentifiable, and we have now declared war against a tactic, and therefore you are expected to be frightened and scared and to succumb and give up liberties for the sake of security. And for my...
We'll never do it!
No.
My estimation is there's never a need to ever sacrifice any liberty for the sake of security.
Right.
We live in a great country. We have great traditions. Freedom is a new idea. It's been tested here like never before. And yet, in our very lifetime, in this last decade, and on a daily basis, it's just drifting away quickly, undermining the Fourth Amendment, no privacy, undermining the idea of habeas corpus, having secret prisons and torture and all the things, these things that we have accepted. And this to me is something that has to be reversed. If we don't do that, we are in big trouble. But we do live in a great country. We have great traditions. The challenge is nothing like the Soviets had because they still have a lot of problems. But we at least know about and have read about, and many of us can remember when it was less intrusive, when we had respect for private property. We had respect for self-ownership, and we didn't endorse blindly the idea of eminent domain and governments just take up properties at will. So we have a tradition of sound money and free markets and contracts. So it shouldn't be that difficult. But we're not going back to ancient days. All we want to do is continue the concepts that were embedded in our Constitution. So this is not a brand new revolution. This is a pickup where we left off and revive the spirit of the revolution, because the time is right. We have an opportunity for all the negative things you see it as an opportunity. This government is failing, the system is failing. That to us should not diminish our enthusiasm. It should say we now have an opportunity, and they will listen to us because we are on the right side of these issues. Thank you very much.